Welcome to Griffonomics.
Glad to be here for this one.
So, I want you to imagine a police officer right now in 2026.
Okay.
They don't even touch a keyboard anymore.
Right, which is just a wild shift in daily operations.
Exactly. Like, their body camera is just listening to a chaotic domestic dispute, right? Over the sound of sirens and traffic.
Yeah, just absolute background noise.
And it automatically drafts this flawless, legally sound incident report, while simultaneously feeding live drone video of, I don't know, a fleeing suspect's escape route to a dispatcher who is halfway across the city.
It sounds like science fiction, honestly.
It really does. But today we are tearing apart the Q1 financials of the company that's making that exact scenario a daily reality.
And we've got a massive stack of material for this.
We do. We are looking at a stack of earnings reports, investor decks, and some really dense strategic analyses centered entirely on Axon Enterprise.
Right.
So the mission for this deep dive, for you listening right now, is to unpack what management is calling their massive AI era inflection point.
Yeah, that phrase is everywhere in their Q1 material.
It is. We really want to understand how a company that historically, just sold physical stun guns and body cameras is aggressively mutating into this operating system for global public safety.
That operating system concept, I mean, that is the defining shift here.
Right.
We're looking at a company that is essentially attempting to build a vertical monopoly on emergency data.
A vertical monopoly.
Exactly. The strategic landscape here is entirely different from a traditional tech firm or a traditional defense contractor.
So how do we evaluate that?
Well, if you look at their recent AI revenue surges, which are frankly staggering, it fundamentally alters the future of policing, security, and really just civic infrastructure as a whole.
Yeah, the numbers are wild.
Right. So the core question we have to explore for you today is whether this unprecedented level of integration across hardware, software, and AI actually justifies the premium valuation the market is placing on this stock.
To understand that AI explosion, though, I feel like we have to start at the bedrock.
Oh, absolutely, the foundation.
Right, because the physical hardware, like the iconic yellow tasers and the black body cameras.
Which is what everyone knows them for.
Exactly. But those are really just the entry points now, aren't they?
Yeah, they're basically just the physical anchors for a massive software ecosystem.
So Axon is no longer this transactional hardware company. They aren't just, shipping a box of devices to a precinct, collecting a check, and walking away until the next upgrade cycle.
Not at all. And the shift to a subscription model is really the financial foundation of everything we're going to discuss today.
Okay, let's get into those numbers.
So the critical metric from the Q1 2026 report is that over 95% of Axon's total revenue is now tied directly to subscription plans.
Wait, 95%?
Yeah, 95%.
That is wild for a company that I think most of the public still views as a weapons manufacturer.
I know, right? They have entirely decoupled their financial health from that traditional, lumpy hardware sales cycle.
So they're a SaaS business now?
Exactly. Software as a service. They just happen to manufacture their own edge computing sensors, which we commonly call cameras and tasers.
And the compounding nature of that subscription revenue, it's highly visible in their ARR, right? Their annual recurring revenue.
Oh, very visible.
Because looking at the report, they reached $1.5 billion in ARR in Q1.
Which is up 35% year over year.
35%. And that's their 9th consecutive quarter of growth exceeding 30%, isn't it?
Yeah, 9 quarters in a row. And look, you don't string together 9 quarters of 30% compounding growth by just selling physical tools.
No, you definitely don't.
You do it by creating an environment the customer literally cannot leave.
Which brings us to the flywheel effect.
Right. It's a textbook flywheel, and it's driven by what the industry refers to as the data tax.
The data tax. Break that down for the listener. What does that actually look like on the ground?
Okay, so think about the physical deployment. An agency equips thousands of officers with the Axon Body 4 camera. Every single time an officer steps out of a vehicle or, unholsters a Taser 10 or responds to a call, high-definition video and audio are recording.
Constantly capturing data.
Constantly. So over just a single month, a mid-sized police department generates tens of thousands of hours of footage.
Which has to go somewhere.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that creates this immediate, overwhelming logistical nightmare for the agency.
Right.
Because where do you store petabytes of evidentiary video securely?
And how do you maintain the legal chain of custody for all of that?
Precisely. Or how do you quickly redact the faces of minors or innocent bystanders before releasing that footage to the media or the courts?
So the hardware itself basically creates this massive administrative disease,
Yes,
and Axon conveniently sells the only viable cure.
that's a great way to put it. The sheer volume of data forces these agencies to adopt Axon's high-margin cloud software.
Primarily Axon evidence, right?
Right, Axon evidence. They have to buy it just to keep their heads above water.
Because what's the alternative for a police department?
I mean, the alternative is trying to build their own secure CJIS-compliant server farms.
Which sounds incredibly expensive.
It is. They'd have to hire an army of IT professionals and manually edit videos for court. It's financially impossible for a municipality.
So they just subscribe to Axon evidence.
Exactly. They pay for the cloud storage. They pay for the automated redaction tools.
And once that digital evidence management system is integrated into their daily workflow,
The switching costs become insurmountable. They are locked in.
it's basically identical to the smartphone ecosystem, specifically Apple.
Oh, 100%.
Like, for you listening, think of the Axon Body 4 camera as the iPhone. It's the beautifully designed physical edge sensor that you interact with.
Right.
But Axon Evidence and the broader cloud suite, that acts as the App Store.
That's a perfect analogy.
The hardware gets you into the ecosystem, but the software layer is where the high-margin, sticky revenue lives. And it's what keeps you from ever leaving for an Android device, or in this case, a competitor's camera.
And the financial metric that actually proves the strength of that Apple-like ecosystem is their net revenue retention, or NRR.
Right, NRR. What's it sitting at right now?
Axon's NRR currently sits at an incredibly strong 125%.
Wow. For anyone looking at SaaS companies, 125% is the gold standard.
It really is.
Just to clarify, that means even if Axon's sales team all went on vacation for a year and they didn't sign a single new police department, their revenue from their existing customer base would still grow by 25%.
Exactly, because those existing customers are constantly generating more data,
Right.
which requires more storage, and they aggressively upgrade to higher-tier software bundles. They don't just renew their contracts, they expand them.
So this hardware-to-software flywheel is the structural reality of the business.
Yes.
But that's really just the foundation for the real story of 2026.
Right, which is what happens when you introduce artificial intelligence into an ecosystem that already holds petabytes of locked-in, highly structured public safety data.
And this is where the numbers start looking completely detached from a normal legacy business.
Totally.
I mean, looking at the Q1 report, their AI product revenue surged more than 700% year over year.
700%. Let that sink in.
That kind of growth usually implies a company started from basically zero, right? But they are deploying this at a massive scale.
They are.
And this 700% surge is driven almost entirely by the release of something called Draft One.
Right, Draft One. And look, Draft One is addressing an actual severe labor crisis in policing.
How so?
Well, to understand why an agency would scramble to buy this software, you have to look at the daily reality of a patrol officer.
Okay.
Currently, officers lose roughly 40% of their operational shifts just to administrative paperwork.
Wait, 40%. So 4 out of every 10 hours are spent basically sitting in a cruiser or at a desk, pecking at a keyboard.
Exactly. And that is incredibly expensive, highly trained labor being completely sidelined by data entry.
That's a huge inefficiency.
Massive. So Draft One is Axon's generative AI report writing tool.
Okay, how does it work?
It takes the audio transcript directly from the officer's body camera. It processes the raw, chaotic audio of an incident.
So it can separate out the voices?
Yeah, it separates the officer's voice from a victim, a suspect, background sirens, street noise, all of that.
That's impressive.
And then it analyzes that transcript and automatically writes a highly detailed, chronological first draft of the incident report.
Automatically.
Automatically. And it even formats it to the specific penal code standards of that local jurisdiction.
So the time savings have to be the main selling point here.
Oh, absolutely. The data from the Fort Collins Police Department trials showed Draft One delivering a 67% decrease in the time officers spent writing incident reports.
A 67% decrease. You're
Yeah.
effectively wiping out 2/3 of that 40% administrative data tax.
Exactly.
But, and this is a big but, the pricing structure for this is aggressive.
Very aggressive.
Because for an agency to access Draft One, they have to step up to Axon's top-tier bundle. I think it's called the OSP 10 Premium with AI Era Plan.
That's the one.
And that plan costs $569 per month per officer.
Right.
which is a $199 per month premium over the standard tier they were likely already paying for.
It is a massive upsell.
I mean, I have to push back here on behalf of the listener. If I'm looking at this from the perspective of a city council member or a mayor,
Sure.
municipal budgets are notoriously strained, right? Cities are fighting to fix potholes and keep schools funded.
Oh, completely.
So a $200 per month per officer price hike for a software upgrade, that seems like an impossible line item to justify when cash is tight.
It sounds impossible until you justify it by looking at the alternative cost of human capital.
Okay, explain that.
We are currently experiencing a global policing labor shortage. Major cities are hundreds, sometimes thousands of officers short of their authorized strength.
Right, recruiting is down everywhere.
Recruiting is down, early retirements are up. So if a city needs more patrol hours on the street, what's the traditional method?
They hire more cops. Right, you recruit a cadet, run a background check, put them through 6 months of academy training, pair them with a field training officer.
And pay their salary, pension, and health care.
Exactly. And that whole process takes over a year and costs well over $100,000 per officer before they ever take a single call independently.
Okay, I see where you're going with this. Or you pay Axon an extra $2,400 a year per officer.
Yes, and you instantly buy back hundreds of hours of patrol time from your existing fully trained veterans.
Wow.
Draft 1 acts as a massive force multiplier. By freeing up 2/3 of the time spent on paperwork, an agency effectively creates new patrol capacity out of thin air.
That's wild. It really is drastically cheaper.
Drastically cheaper, infinitely faster, and it carries zero recruitment risk.
Right, because the officers are already there.
Exactly. The ROI, the return on investment, is so immediate and undeniable that police chiefs are literally going to their city councils and rewriting multi-year contracts mid-flight just to secure the funding for this AI bundle.
It basically transitions the software from a luxury to an absolute operational necessity.
It does.
So ground game is locked down, they have the data, they have the officer's time.
Right.
But looking at the Q1 reports, they reveal this massive expansion strategy that moves completely off the ground and into the airspace.
Yeah, the deployment of what they're calling the 3D dome strategy.
The 3D dome.
Right. And this revolves heavily around their recent acquisition of Dedrone, which is a company specializing in counter-drone technology.
And the growth metrics for Dedrone are moving just as fast as the AI software, aren't they?
Oh, absolutely.
Because I'm looking here, counter-drone product revenue is up over 300% year over year,
Yeah.
and bookings have surged 500%.
It's explosive growth.
They're heavily highlighting deployments at major 2026 events. Like, they secured the airspace over the Super Bowl, the Kentucky Derby,
Right.
and they are building out the infrastructure for the upcoming American World Cup sites.
Yep.
They're deploying this modular unit, I think it's called the Sky Carrier.
The Sky Carrier.
It basically looks like a portable shipping container that combines Dedrone sensor arrays, Starlink satellite internet, and their own rapid launch drones into this single droppable security outpost.
Yeah. The hardware is incredibly impressive. But understanding how it actually works is crucial to understanding why those bookings are up 500%.
Walk us through it.
So securing airspace against drones is incredibly difficult, primarily because of false positives.
Like flagging things that aren't drones.
Exactly. If a city uses only radar, the system will constantly flag flocks of birds as threats.
Right.
If they use only optical cameras, the system gets blinded by the sun or fog.
So how does Dedrone solve that?
Dedrone's core value is something called sensor fusion. The Dedrone C2 platform combines radar to detect mass, optical and thermal cameras to identify shape, and most importantly, radio frequency interception.
Radio frequency, so it's listening to the drones.
Yes, it actually listens for the specific data handshake between a commercial drone and the pilot's remote control on the ground.
Wow. So when you fuse all three of those inputs together, you basically eliminate the birds and the weather.
Exactly.
And you get a definitive lock-on confirmation of a rogue drone.
Right. That elimination of false positives is what actually makes the technology viable for a major city.
That makes total sense.
But, the real catalyst driving this 300% revenue growth isn't just the engineering.
What is it then?
It's a massive legislative tailwind called the Safer Skies Act.
Okay, let's get into the mechanics of that legislation. Because as we read through the sources, it's clear this changes the entire market dynamic for counter-drone tech.
It completely flips it. So prior to the Safer Skies Act, dealing with a drone was a legal minefield for local law enforcement.
Because of the FAA.
Exactly. The airspace is governed by the FAA. So technically, shooting down or electronically jamming a drone was often considered interfering with an aircraft,
Which is a federal
a
crime.
major federal crime.
Yeah.
So local police departments basically had their hands tied.
Right.
The Safer Skies Act completely removed that barrier.
So
Well, first, it provides $250 million in federal grants, specifically for local agencies to purchase drone mitigation technology.
okay, so the funding is there.
And crucially, it grants them the explicit legal authorization to electronically hijack, jam, or physically disable drones that pose a threat to public safety.
It's important to point out we're not taking a stance on the politics of that authorization here, just reporting the facts of the legislation as outlined in the analysis.
Absolutely. The business reality is that the act passed.
Right, so they gave the police the money to buy the gear and the legal shield to actually pull the trigger.
Exactly.
But looking at the deployments, the Super Bowl, the Kentucky Derby, these are pop-up events.
Sure.
A stadium needs this level of security for 4 hours on a Sunday or one weekend a year.
Right.
How does an event-driven business model translate to sustainable long-term revenue growth? Because pop-up security doesn't really seem to fit Axon's obsession with permanent recurring software subscriptions.
That's a great observation.
Mhm.
But the pop-up events are really just high-profile marketing demonstrations.
Oh, really?
Yeah. What the Q1 metrics indicate is a psychological shift in the market. Empowered by that legal authority and the federal grants of the Safer Skies Act, agencies are moving Dedrone from a temporary rental model to permanent, multi-year infrastructure.
Permanent infrastructure.
Right. A city police department isn't just renting a sky carrier for a parade anymore. They are integrating Dedrone sensors permanently onto the rooftops of their city halls,
Wow.
onto the perimeters of their water treatment plants, and into local enterprise data centers.
So they are genuinely building an invisible permanent roof over the city.
Yes, the 3D dome. It represents a massive blue ocean market for them.
That's fascinating.
They are taking technology that was validated in war zones and temporary sporting events and weaving it into the permanent, everyday physical infrastructure of municipal and commercial real estate.
The strategic narrative is incredible. I mean, AI writing reports, invisible domes over stadiums.
There's a lot to take in.
It is, but the narrative has to be supported by the financial ledger.
Always.
We need to look at the Q1 2026 financial realities to see if the engine is truly humming underneath all this futuristic technology.
Well, the top line numbers are definitely robust. Q1 total revenue came in at $807 million.
Which is a 34% increase year over year.
Yeah, but in a subscription-heavy business like this, current revenue is really only a snapshot of the past.
Right.
The metric that dictates the future is the contracted backlog.
And Axon's backlog is sitting at an astonishing $14.3 billion.
It's a massive number.
It is. That's up 44% year over year.
Yeah.
And to put that in perspective for you listening, their backlog is growing 10% faster than their actual recognized revenue.
Right, and a backlog of that magnitude fundamentally changes how the company can operate.
How so?
Well, that $14.3 billion represents legally binding multi-year contracts signed by municipalities and governments.
They can't just cancel them.
Exactly. Even if the broader macroeconomy goes into a severe recession tomorrow, Axon has a massive multi-year shock absorber built right into its balance sheet.
It provides unprecedented revenue visibility well into 2027 and 2028.
Yes. In fact, management noted they expect to fulfill and recognize 20 to 25% of that entire $14.3 billion balance over the next 12 months alone.
So the growth is undeniably locked in.
It is.
But looking at the margins, they present a slightly messier picture.
Yeah, this is where it gets complicated.
The reports show that Axon's software-only margins are exceptional. They're exceeding 80%.
Which is exactly what you want from a mature SaaS business.
Right. However, their blended software and services margin, which is the actual reported segment margin, is dragging down at 72.4%.
Yeah, that's a noticeable gap.
So I have to ask, if the software is pumping out 80+% gross margins, what is dragging the blended segment down by almost a full 800 basis points? Are they losing efficiency somewhere?
It's not necessarily a loss of efficiency. The culprit is what we call deployment friction.
Deployment friction. What does that mean?
Well, when Axon sells a massive citywide ecosystem, thousands of body cameras, tasers, the Draft One software, the Dedrone installations, the Fusus integration,
Right.
it doesn't just magically turn on. It requires significant upfront professional services.
Ah, okay.
Axon has to send highly paid technicians and integration specialists on site to physically wire dispatch centers, configure local servers to talk to the cloud, train the officers, and literally physically install radar panels on rooftops.
It's essentially the same financial dynamic as laying fiber optic cables.
That's a perfect comparison.
Like, a telecom company bleeds cash and crushes its own margins in the short term by digging up the streets and paying labor crews to run the physical wire to your house.
Exactly.
But once that pipe is installed and connected to the router, the physical labor is done.
Yep.
And then they just charge you a high-margin monthly subscription for the next decade.
That is the exact mechanism here. The professional services and installation labor carry very low, sometimes even negative, margins.
So they are dragging down that blended 72.4% figure today.
Yes, but management aggressively accepts this short-term deployment friction.
Because they know the payoff is coming.
Exactly. Because once the system is live, the labor costs vanish, and that customer transitions into a multi-year subscriber paying for 80+% margin cloud software.
So they are intentionally suppressing current segment margins to guarantee long-term ecosystem monopoly.
Absolutely, that's the play.
So with the $14.3 billion war chest locked in, we really have to look at how they are deploying that capital to expand their footprint.
Because they aren't just selling to patrol officers anymore.
No, they are attempting to build what they call mission-critical gravity across entirely new sectors.
Right. And this expansion strategy centers on fundamentally altering the timeline of emergency response itself.
Okay, tell us more about that.
Well, the historical model of policing is a system of record. An event happens, an officer arrives after the fact, takes notes, and basically records the aftermath.
Right, it's reactionary.
Axon is using their M&A strategy, their mergers and acquisitions, to shift that paradigm entirely to real-time intelligence.
And the acquisitions of Prepared and Carbine are the cornerstones of this shift, right? Building out what they call Axon 911.
Yes, because the legacy 911 system is incredibly fragile.
Oh, it really is.
A citizen panics, calls from a cell phone, and verbally tries to describe a chaotic emergency to a dispatcher who is sitting in a windowless room.
Right.
The dispatcher then keys a radio and verbally repeats that summarized information to a patrol officer in a car.
It's a high-stakes game of telephone.
Exactly. And critical details like whether a suspect has a weapon or exactly what direction they ran, those are lost, delayed, or misunderstood.
So how does Axon 911 bypass that?
By integrating the technology from Prepared and Carbine, the dispatcher can actually send a link to the 911 caller's smartphone.
Okay.
And that instantly turns the caller's camera into a live video feed directly into the dispatch center.
That's huge.
But the true power is realized when that live feed is routed into Axon Fusus.
Fusus, that's the central hub, right?
Yes, Fusus is the central nervous system. It aggregates everything.
So Fusus pulls the live video from the 911 caller.
Right.
It pulls the live feed from the city's traffic cameras. It pulls the video from the security cameras inside the local grocery store that opted into the network.
Exactly.
And it pulls the live aerial video from DFR, the drone, as first responder, which is a drone automatically launched from a rooftop the second the 911 call comes in.
Yes. And Fusus streams all of that aggregated, multi-angle, real-time intelligence directly to the screen inside the responding officer's cruiser before they even arrive on the scene.
That is just incredible.
They aren't relying on a verbal description of a suspect over a crackling radio. They are watching the suspect move in real time.
It completely eliminates the blind spot between the 911 call and the officer's arrival.
It does.
Like, you could compare traditional 911 to a blind landline call, whereas Axon 911 and Fusus, it's like a live multi-camera Twitch stream for dispatchers.
That's a really good way to visualize it.
And this architecture is also what allows Axon to break out of the traditional municipal police silo and push into entirely new blue ocean markets.
Right. Like we noted earlier, international revenue is booming. It's up over 100%, and now accounts for 20% of their total quarterly revenue.
But the push into domestic enterprise security and the justice system, that is where the total addressable market just explodes.
Oh, absolutely. The court system is the ultimate bottleneck in the criminal justice process.
Because prosecutors are drowning in the exact same data tax that patrol officers face.
Exactly. If a complex incident involves 5 officers, a prosecutor might have 20 hours of overlapping body camera footage to review for just a single case.
That's unsustainable.
So Axon introduced Brief One. It utilizes AI to ingest all of that footage, compress hours of video review into minutes, generate chronological summaries, and automatically surface key moments of evidentiary value for the prosecutor.
And they are bringing that same automation to the private sector with Form 1.
Right, Form 1.
It's essentially a universal browser extension, isn't it? Like, if you are a security guard at a retail chain or a hospital, Form 1 uses the body camera data Axon has already captured to automatically fill out complex non-police incident reports.
Yeah, workers' compensation forms, liability documentation, all using AI.
So by moving into the courts with Brief 1 and into retail, logistics, and healthcare with Form 1, Axon is making themselves indispensable to the entire civic and commercial infrastructure.
They really are. They are no longer just the hardware vendor for the cops on the street. They are the digital glue holding the administrative, legal, and security operations of the entire city together.
Which perfectly explains that 125% net revenue retention we talked about.
Once a hospital system or a district attorney's office integrates these AI tools, they can never go back to manual review.
Never. However, to provide a truly objective deep dive into this financial transition, we must aggressively interrogate the risks.
And there are definitely risks.
There is significant market skepticism surrounding Axon's stock, and the Q1 ledger shows some glaring red flags that we cannot ignore.
The most immediate pressure point is the severe margin compression at the corporate level.
Right.
Despite the booming high-margin software revenue we just discussed, Axon's consolidated gross margin actually dropped by 150 basis points. It landed at 59.1% in Q1.
When a company's core narrative is that they are transforming into a highly profitable SaaS platform, seeing the overall corporate gross margin dip into the 50s is a massive red flag for institutional investors.
It absolutely is.
What is causing that severe drag?
It is the physical reality of their hardware supply chain colliding with a rapid expansion. There are basically two main drivers here.
Okay, what's the first?
First, global tariffs and supply chain inflation on the physical microchips, lenses, and internal components required to manufacture the cameras and tasers.
So the cost of goods sold is rising.
Yes. And second, there's a fundamental shift in their product mix.
Oh.
Because Dedrone's physical counter-drone systems, the massive radar arrays, the radio frequency jammers, the sky carriers,
Right.
because they're being adopted so rapidly, Axon is selling a much higher volume of very expensive, lower-margin hardware compared to previous quarters.
Oh, I see.
Building and shipping advanced aerospace radar carries significantly worse margins than selling an AI software license.
So the hardware success is actively penalizing their gross margins.
In the short term, yes.
But, the margin compression really pales in comparison to the most heavily criticized line item on their income statement.
You're talking about the stock-based compensation.
Yes, the staggering volume of stock-based compensation, or SBC. Because the Q1 projections show Axon expects to issue between $590 million and $620 million in stock-based compensation for the full year of 2026.
It is an astronomical figure.
Over $500 million in stock being handed to employees and executives.
Yeah. And this SBC is primarily tied to highly aggressive, performance-based incentive programs, specifically the tranches structured for the CEO, Rick Smith, and key engineering talent.
Now, management defends this by committing to keep average annual dilution below 2.5%, ensuring that the total pie of shares doesn't expand so fast that it crushes existing shareholders.
Right.
But if I'm an investor looking at the bottom line, I really have to question the reality of their profitability.
That's a fair question.
Axon is eating massive deployment costs and labor friction to physically install these systems in cities and simultaneously paying out $600 million in stock to their own employees.
Yeah.
So does this mean the real GAAP profitability, the generally accepted accounting principles standard that measures true bottom line earnings, is essentially an illusion subsidized by shareholders? Are investors basically just subsidizing Axon's growth?
It is the central tension of investing in a hyper-growth platform.
Oh.
Yes, that $600 million in SBC is a massive real-world expense. It severely impacts GAAP profitability because it represents equity value that is not flowing to the bottom line for the shareholders.
Right.
So the skeptical view is exactly what you just said, that the company is buying its growth through excessive dilution.
What is the defense from the bulls then? How do they justify a $600 million internal payout?
The bull case argues that this aggressive capital structure is basically the only way to build an insurmountable monopoly.
Okay.
You have to look at the return on invested capital,
Yeah.
specifically their M&A track record.
Their acquisitions.
Right. When Axon acquired Fusus and Dedrone, it required massive amounts of capital and stock.
Right.
But the Q1 data shows those specific acquisitions have already generated 1.5 times their original purchase price in newly contracted bookings within just 18 to 24 months.
Wow. A 1.5x payback period on a major acquisition in under 2 years is almost unheard of in enterprise software.
Exactly. It's incredibly fast. Combine that lightning-fast M&A integration with the $14.3 billion backlog and the 125% net revenue retention,
Right?
and the bulls argue that the SBC is simply the cost of doing business at this scale. You issue the stock today. You accept the lower GAAP profits today in order to guarantee that in 2030, you own the entire public safety infrastructure of the Western Hemisphere.
It's a bold strategy. And synthesizing this entire landscape really requires looking at the sum of the parts.
It does.
The AI generating reports from chaotic audio, the Dedrone radar domes securing airspace, the Fusus platform turning 911 calls into live Twitch streams for dispatchers, and the aggressive financial structure funding it all.
Right.
It leads to the final strategic evaluation of their core thesis, which is that Axon is attempting to build an absolute vertical monopoly on public safety data.
The concept of vertical monopoly is usually theoretical,
Yeah.
but here we can actually trace the exact chain of custody.
How does that data flow work?
Well, the data flow is entirely captured. It starts the second a citizen dials a phone, captured and routed by Axon 911.
Okay.
That data is instantly aggregated by the Fusus dispatch hub.
Right.
Fusus feeds it to the physical edge sensors on the scene, the Axon Body 4 and the Taser 10.
Yep.
During the incident, the hardware records the reality. After the incident, the audio is automatically transcribed and formatted by Draft 1 to write the police report.
Incredible.
And finally, months later, that evidence is packaged, summarized, and presented in the courtroom using Brief 1 and Axon evidence.
So Axon owns, processes, and monetizes every single touch point of that multi-year timeline.
Exactly. They refer to this internal ecosystem pull as Axon Gravity.
Axon Gravity.
Right. The stated multi-year vision is to make Axon the world's largest, most interconnected repository of AI-enhanced public safety data.
And they tie this massive technological web to their Moonshot 2030 goal, right?
They do.
The Moonshot is a corporate mission to cut gun-related deaths between police and the public by 50% by the end of the decade.
Which is a massive goal.
It is. And again, neutrally speaking, by framing this dominant technology stack as a tool for a genuine humanitarian mission, they create a product that is politically palatable for municipal ethics boards, while simultaneously driving total market capture for their shareholders.
Which brings us to the ultimate comparison for their valuation. Is Axon the Palantir of public safety?
I mean, they trade at massive premium multiples compared to any traditional defense or hardware stock.
They do.
Oh.
The market is pricing them as an irreplaceable software monopoly.
The question is whether they are so deeply entrenched in the civic infrastructure that it is simply too late for a competitor to disrupt them.
Well, let's look at the switching costs.
Yeah, if a competitor somehow builds a slightly better body camera or a slightly faster report-writing AI, could they unseat Axon?
Practically speaking, no.
Really?
The switching costs are now impossibly high. Imagine the logistical reality of a police chief or a mayor trying to transition away from Axon.
Okay, what happens?
You have given your entire workforce 2/3 of their administrative time back using Draft 1. Your officers are accustomed to leaving their shift on time instead of typing for 2 hours.
Right.
You have connected your entire city's traffic and retail camera network into the Fusus dashboard. You have secured your sports stadiums and water treatment plants with permanent Dedrone radar installations.
You can't just unplug all of that.
You cannot simply rip that operating system out.
Yeah.
Doing so would instantly paralyze your city's emergency response capabilities.
It would require retraining thousands of employees.
Exactly. And likely cause a mutiny among the patrol officers who would be forced back to manual typing.
That's a great point.
The premium valuation the market places on Axon is a direct reflection of this near invincibility.
So we have tracked one of the most impressive and aggressive pivots in the modern technology sector today.
Without a doubt.
Axon transformed from a company known solely for selling electrical stun weapons into an indispensable cloud-based software platform. They utilize generative AI not as a flashy gimmick, but as a literal labor force multiplier to solve an acute municipal hiring crisis.
Right.
They expanded their footprint from the streets into the skies with Dedrone, securing the airspace over major global events. And they orchestrated all of this while locking in a staggering $14.3 billion in legally binding future revenue.
It really is a masterclass in ecosystem lock-in and platformization.
It really is.
But as we look at the trajectory of this technology, the integration of all these systems leads to a pretty chilling realization about the future of civic life.
What do you mean?
Well, we discussed how their current systems, like Axon Guardian, are already listening to the live audio on body cameras to detect the acoustic signatures of escalating tension.
Right.
And we know Axon Vision is utilizing AI on live CCTV feeds to spot anomalies, fights, or medical emergencies the second they happen.
So the cameras and the microphones are constantly active, constantly analyzing the baseline of the city.
Exactly. So the final forward-looking thought I'll leave you with is this. What happens when this massive interconnected AI network holding petabytes of historical data, real-time drone feeds, and live acoustic analysis from every street corner transitions from merely reacting to crimes as they happen to mathematically predicting them before they occur?
Like Minority Report.
Exactly like that.
Yeah.
As Axon builds the ultimate architecture for public safety, they are simultaneously laying the exact infrastructure required for an omnipresent surveillance state.
Wow.
The technology itself is entirely agnostic. Society, not the software, will have to decide where the line is drawn.
That is a fascinating and heavy reality to monitor as this network goes live. Risk defined, portfolio protected.